Obviously, with Pure Harvest, you've gone through different rounds of funding. What are the main differences in those rounds in terms of what investors are looking for or asking you?
Yeah, well, we've gone through the whole gamut of raising a pre-seed round, which is basically a friends and family round where nobody's going to invest except people who already know you and believe in you, right?
Yes.
Because you have nothing at that stage. I mean, you have an idea.
Right.
Don't even really necessarily have a business plan, right? Maybe some kind of an early deck. But then, people are believing in you, right, as an entrepreneur, right? Maybe they've worked with you, they've, been classmates with you, or, they're your family and believe in you, right? But that's where typically the early funding comes in. And then, typically then in the seed round, you've already got some kind of, at least a business plan, at least, a very clear, path to executing on some kind of a proof of concept.
Yes.
And then you raise, the seed funding, you get that sort of, it could be an MVP or it could be already sort of a pilot, which it was in our case.
Right.
And then the Series A is to sort of expand, so, in the beginning you're going, 0 to 1, and then, Series A is going to be that first kind of, 1 to 2, and scaling to kind of industrial scale and getting finally the profitable unit economics.
Right. And there's more of a product market fit by then also.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because you have identified actually what the product is and the customer profiles.
We had already been selling into the market through our pilot greenhouse for like almost 2 years before we raised our Series A. So we had a lot of data in terms of sales, in terms of our cost structure. We could, seeing is very much believing with investment as well. So if you can have something that you can show to people, like our conversion rate is very high of people that come and actually take the effort to see what we're doing. It's a very, very high percentage of them that will then invest.
Right. Yes.
Because there's something that, when you have that personal experience of a project, it just builds that confidence, right? It's just a practical way to really ground that conviction.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
In terms of product market fit, or even just a founder having an idea, what's the best way for them to validate that idea without wasting time and money at the very beginning if it's not a good idea?
So I think what I would say is, engage with your potential customer base as early as possible and validate through, even if it's just drawings or some kind of sketches of, if it's an app or, giving them some kind of a demo. Nowadays, I haven't actually done it myself, but people tell me a lot, like there's this thing called vibe coding now, right? Which, people,
Yes.
Apparently you don't need to have like a computer science degree or any experience with coding, and you can now like build like at least basic, apps and stuff.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So probably like that's a very good tool, to create an MVP or an early MVP, right? Something that can show some kind of functionality, right? So
Absolutely. And I'm sure there are many founders who fall into the trap of getting into the market with a perfect product, spend a couple of years, a lot of money, and then they realize that perhaps this is a product which the customers are not ready for. There is a need to pivot. So even a bare bone product would actually help them pivot their idea and go to market with something more concrete.
Iterate in the early days, and there's so many solutions chasing a problem. If you look at even my industry, vertical farming, there were a lot of tech companies in Europe and the US in particular that had raised billions of dollars actually, to build, these vertical farms, like fully enclosed environments, with LED lighting and, even robots and, fully contained, fully controlled, even higher level of control than our greenhouses. And very few of them are still standing today, simply because very expensive to build, very expensive to operate. And again, food markets are incredibly competitive and consumers aren't willing to pay a premium.
This is something I wanted to ask you actually, in terms of like evolving the product or evolving the service. I sometimes like think that founders are doing too much and perfecting something that isn't actually like maybe even the right thing to be perfecting. And this came to mind when I was reading sort of the journey that you guys have been on and how you only started optimizing the greenhouses in terms of like water conservation and stuff like that much later, like much later. What's your take on this whole like, almost like start now and then get perfect later down the road type
well,
of
there's
thing.
a famous guy called Paul Graham of Y Combinator, who is one of his most famous sayings is, do things that don't scale.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because like everyone like starts a startup and they all think,
it's
okay, I'm gonna
counterintuitive, but
I've heard this quote actually. Yeah. I like
but don't think about building an Uber like from day one. Like, try to really validate a pain point.
Yeah.
A lot of there's some good books as well. And actually there's a book that Paul Graham's wife, and they wrote on a lot of the success stories. They interviewed a lot of successful founders. And even Peter Thiel and how they, did the Palm Pilots, before they did PayPal and,
right.
But the whole idea, right, is that you want to really validate that there's a real problem. And a lot of the best founders, they actually developed solutions to problems that they themselves had.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, we've heard that a few times. Like from people that we've interviewed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the founder of, say, email, right, was just frustrated, that he wouldn't be able to access, his email server, right, from unless he was physically in the office. Right. And so he just created it for himself, to be able to send, email anywhere. And so you can see a lot of examples with that.
And I have a question over here, which I feel every founder is asked this question with their startup idea, is about competition. And what if a bigger player with deeper pockets from another region comes in and competes? How do we, or rather, how would that founder stand their ground? So considering Pure Harvest, I'm sure that it wasn't the only idea in this world, right? So had there been questions about this, and internally, as with your co-founders or with the operations team, what was the discussion that how do we differentiate ourselves?
Yeah, that was definitely a concern. I think that a big concern was among investors that, look, you guys are going to do this project, prove it, and then the sheikhs are then going to, throw billions at it
and copy.
And,
replicate.
Just replicate it, right?
Yes.
And funny enough, you saw that happen, actually.
Oh, okay.
So just as we launched, there was a much more resourced company that did a joint venture with a big local company, and they did build a project that was over 12 times the size of our greenhouse with a very similar technology. But for various different reasons, they couldn't execute. There was, some issues there with the technology selection, the site selection, the operations, and we ended up buying them.
Wow.
About 3 years later. So I would say a lot of people overestimate what capital alone can do. There's a lot of expertise born from just having done it, right? The fact that, we started with a proof of concept to learn how would this technology perform in this climate, in this extreme heat and humidity, half the year. The fact that we were able to get these learnings early with a subscale facility put us on a very, very powerful foot when we started to expand. And so now, even though that is the trade secrets that we have in that, how to design and engineer the optimal facility and operate it. I mean, we have a lot of expertise. Our growers have a lot of that expertise that very few companies, if any, in the world actually have, because there's just very few examples. I mean, maybe places in Saudi, but Saudi has less humidity than here in Abu Dhabi. So we're really in one of the most extreme environments of operating this sort of industrial scale, greenhouse facility.
But it must be difficult because, like you say, you've got to move so fast.
Yeah.
But if you're not going in the right direction, you can be so fast in the wrong direction that it's really quite hard.
Yeah. Well, there is. I mean, but then so when you're moving fast, you don't want to move fast in a way that, okay, now you're spending a lot of money and, you want to move fast in speaking about what we talked about a few minutes ago was validating a problem. right? Validating that a real problem exists, showing that you can solve it, right? And then you want to quickly show product market fit once you've launched through growth.
Yes.
And the only way to really demonstrate product market fit is showing very fast growth. And it doesn't have to be that you're necessarily growing. Of course, that's how it should be in terms of revenue and sales and customers, but demand, right?
Yes.
Because a lot of the time, like a lot of the best startups, they can't even keep up, with demand, in the beginning. And that's when you know that, you've hit product market fit, right?
Yes.
I mean, you've got, 6 to 12 months, or 8 to 12 months of, month on month growth, that's really high, over 20%. I mean, you probably hit the jackpot, maybe. You have to see, because it could also maybe be something that's like, depends on the solution. It could be market specific, or it could be in some, because if the addressable market that you're playing in is really small, then you'll grow. But but if it's not a big market, then you're also not going to be, that valuable. But I would say, like, a lot of the experienced investors, they do recommend, like, don't try to target the whole market like right away. Try to pick, say, a segment of the market that you can have an unfair advantage and really win that. And then with that win, you can then move laterally, right, to other segments, right, and expand. Yeah. So that's, again, to the point, like, don't do things that are scalable, right? Like, try to conquer, right, a specific segment of the market and, be the winner there.
Right.
And then, find ways then, to move from there.
Yeah. But as you were saying with Pure Harvest as well, and we're talking about markets. So when did you identify that it's the right time to expand to a new market?
Well, I think from the very beginning, we knew that, look, the UAE is our home. We obviously want to be able to dominate this market, which now we are, at least in the area of specialty tomatoes in retail. But we always knew that, look, because we're targeting the premium segment, and we will probably never be competitive with the mass market, because there's a lot of very low-cost product coming in from Iran and other parts of, like, the GCC. Like, seasonally, a lot of product comes in from Jordan, as well. That's good quality and low cost. Malaysia, but a lot from Iran. So we know that, like, we're just not, like, gonna compete with that. So we knew from the very beginning that we would have to look abroad. And so Saudi, for example, is a big market. We're already in Saudi and looking to expand, continue to expand in Saudi. But even move beyond the Middle East. We've been in contact with Singapore, and the government has been, inviting us to build projects there, and other parts of the world.